Sit back, relax, and join William and Lee on their journey through the strange and mysterious world.
Welcome to Strange and Mysterious World, Season 2, Episode 26. We have a guest coming on that in the UFO community, even if you've done a little bit of research, you will know our following guest, Whitley Strieber. And, you know, the first time I heard about Whitley was back in the 80s, dude. I was still in it was early high school. I saw a movie called Communion. And sure. I don't know if you remember, did you ever see the movie? It had Christopher Walken, the good old great Christopher Walken. What a fantastic actor. But it was like a weird movie, dude. It was like the strangest thing.
Geez, you must read the book.
It's like there was a lot, it sounded like there was a lot of OBE going on. Look, obviously we understand a little bit more now, obviously with the research that we're doing for remote viewing and, you know, those kind of things, we're understanding the world a little bit better. But there's a lot of the stuff that people are talking about, even what we was talking about, that's like sort of sleep paralysis and those kind of things. And we know that to be like almost OBE experiences. So, yeah, but I remember that movie so clearly, even to today, I remember it.
Yeah,
so he's
well,
very well known in the community.
Yeah, so Whitley is probably the most famous abductee ever. I mean, after his book Communion that came out in 1987, which you know, took the world by storm. I think it was a New York Times bestseller. Anyway, it was
because the movie came out in 1989, I think it was.
Yeah, but it was about his
abduction.
His abduction story, and he was a fiction writer before that. They wrote like horror novels. So when they came out, people didn't take it seriously. Well, I mean, like a lot of people did take it seriously. I mean, obviously, every abductee that ever walked into a bookshop and saw the picture of a grey, because there was a grey on the cover, then they all were like, "Oh my God, that's the thing that's been taking me at night." And then they were, you know, obviously, Whitley after that book got millions and millions of, or sorry, millions, thousands of email. It wasn't even emails in those days. Thousands of letters about like all of these other experiences. So it really, yeah, this was the start of something big. And yeah, I'm really excited to have him on the show. I've been a fan of him for ages.
100%, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, shit. I recall, if I remember right, he started writing in the 1970s, 1978, 79. His first book came out. If I recall correctly, it was something about a Wolfen or something to that extent. There's actually a few movies that have been made from his books. I can't remember the title of the book, but the movie The Day After Tomorrow, you know, where the world is kind of...
Yeah, he was, what do you call it, like a consultant on that film.
Yeah, yeah. The book was called something else, but the movie was Day After Tomorrow. That was based on his writing.
Yeah, so he's actually influenced our culture of UFO culture. I mean, beyond you know, what we know today. I mean, I wanted to ask him that iconic picture of the grey, if that was first came out, that picture with his book or not.
I think it was, because I think he recalls, if I remember him talking about when he woke up, he saw this being with slanted eyes looking down at him.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if that was in our pop culture, like with the alien with the big eyes. You know,
it was because Betty and Barney Hill were the
no, but they
first
didn't
in the 60s.
They said it was reptiles. Their abduction was reptiles. They described reptilian beings. They didn't describe greys with big eyes.
No, they did.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd love to. Well, when he comes on, we'll get to the bottom of that.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Here we go.
Cool.
Hi, Whitley. Hey, there we go. How's it going?
Hi, Whitley. Can you hear us?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay. How are you?
Oh, fine, thank you.
Good, man. My name is Lee, and that's William, obviously, our co-host of Australian Mysterious World. It's such an honor to have you on the show. Seriously, I mean,
thank you very much.
I recall seeing the Communion, and I know you probably are sick and tired of hearing people saying this, but I mean, I was back in high school, and the first thing I remember of your stuff was the Communion. And that's, I mean, still today with Christopher Walken, still today I can remember that movie so clearly. And that was my introduction into your field. And then obviously you are very well known in the UFO community. So I mean, if people even done a slight bit of research into the UFO phenomenon, your name is definitely there. So it's really a pleasure having you on tonight, Whitley.
Well, thank
Yes,
you very
Whit- Yes, Willie, likewise. I've also read quite a few of your books, and obviously they're all very special to me. And I mean, when Them was coming out, I mean, I waited with bated breath every day for it to be released. So, and I enjoy it very much. And obviously, Communion was, yeah, very fantastic. So, thanks for being here with us today.
Okay, great.
So you started writing, I think what your first books came out in the 70s, late 70s, 1978,
Late
79.
70s, yes.
Yeah.
If not wrong, I think 1978, my first novel, The Wolfen, came out.
Yeah. And that was a horror story.
Well, yes, I thought it was fun, but people considered it fairly scary.
Okay. And what kind of made you get into, to doing those kind of things? So you wanted to start doing
Well, I backed into it. I didn't even know what horror novels were.
Yeah.
I'd never read one. I never was aware of them existing as a separate group of books. I had read, well, I guess I had read some H.P. Lovecraft stories when I was younger, but I didn't really know it was a genre. Let me put it that way. And however, I was taking a walk in the evening once in Central Park in New York, which I live near it, and these dogs started shadowing me. It was quite, excuse me, I'm going to have allergies. I'm sorry.
No.
It's
No, I'll probably
I'm
sneeze
sure
myself
there
a few
must
times.
be lots of allergens in South Africa. There certainly are here in California. So anyway, uh, the dog, I was walking on, oddly enough, on a walk called the Literary Walk. And it was probably about 2 in the morning, and I don't sleep much, and I often will walk very late. And it's not dangerous because there's nobody there. Any brigand going after people would starve to death in Central Park in the middle of the night like that. I was the only person in the park. So, but I began to be shadowed by a pack of dogs. There are lots of feral dogs in New York, and they would stay on the outside of the lines of trees, but they were obviously very interested in me, and some of them were rather large. And I thought to myself, these dogs could easily attack me. I mean, I don't know what they may do. But they drifted away, and I went home. And the next day, the idea of the Wolfen the next morning came into my mind, and that's how it started.
Okay.
I decided to write a story about animals who were as smart as human beings because these dogs just inspired that story.
Okay, that's actually pretty awesome. That's pretty cool.
Wow, yeah, we in South Africa will be more scared of the people in the park than of the dogs. It's pretty brave of you walking at night at New York at that time in the park. Sounds scary just enough. Never mind the dogs.
No, it wasn't scary at all. You'd have to have been there.
Mm.
There was nobody there. Nobody.
Okay.
Oh, and Whitley, I see the pictures of Communion behind you with the gray alien with the eyes. And me
Yeah.
and Lee we were talking before this, and we were trying to, like, that iconic image of the gray with the big eyes and that, was that famous before your book Communion, or did that image actually put it on the map?
No, that's the first time the wider public saw an image like that. There were images like that, certainly, but not that image. That's the one that started the whole thing, and that became the image. And I've always thought to myself, should aliens land and not look like that, I'm going to be a little embarrassed.
No, but I think, I mean, with I was with MUFON for many years, and the reports and stuff that used to come through to us, a lot of people, whether or not maybe it's by association, but a lot of people used to see that, whether they were tall, whether they were short. It was a very standard looking being.
Well, yeah, they're not nearly as attractive as that one on the cover of Communion,
Yeah.
but they definitely have those big black eyes.
Okay.
Their heads are bigger.
All right. And then, so, and how did the whole, yes, I know Communion came, the movie came from the book, but how did the whole thing actually start? So, I mean, you experienced sleep paralysis, which is the
No, I've never had an experience of sleep paralysis as far as I know.
okay.
Um, I had what I think I would describe as a disturbed night in the night of December the 26th, 1985, and woke up the next morning not feeling well. And I had the impression that there had been an owl in the house during the night. And this was in a relatively isolated cabin in upstate New York in the woods. And my wife said, well, that's not possible. And it wasn't, because there was no way for an owl to get into the house. And the next evening came, and I felt very disturbed by then. I was deeply concerned. I didn't know what had happened to me, but I knew something had. And over the next week or so, I began to feel a significant amount of rectal pain, and I noticed I had remembered someone giving me a needle injection in my head, and I can remember then I saw this little red dot there, and I began to have disjointed memories of some kind of of a of an attack, being attacked would be the best way to put it. And I became quite concerned because by that time I was really a pretty well-known writer, and I had published a book a year before called War Day, which had annoyed the politicians, what do they call the administration, the Reagan administration. And I thought to myself, what if they've sent someone to attack me? Because in those days, it's probably still true for all I know, but they would play dirty tricks on people they didn't like, the political leaders. And then I thought maybe it's some members of the public, maybe I've been assaulted, because I couldn't really believe the government would do something like that. I didn't think about aliens at all, because it simply wasn't part of my reality. So I was, I called the New York State Police, and they sent a man from the Criminal Investigation Division, but he couldn't help me because I had, as he put it, you have no evidence. And I said that they were apparently wearing masks. And he said, well, we'd have to have more than that, because and I probably described them to him. But it didn't occur to him or to me that what I was describing was some kind of real being. Never at all. Then my rectum was hurting so much, I went to the doctor, and he said, you have got a lesion, you've been injured. And I thought to myself, how could that be? I said, I don't understand. How would that happen? He said, well, Whitley, I don't know, but this has happened to you. Do you have any memory of this? And I said, I described what I at that point did remember. And he said, well, you're telling me you were taken aboard a flying saucer by little men. And I thought to myself, my God, that is what it sounds like. And he said, I didn't, of course, it never occurred to either of us that anything real could be involved. So I thought, have I got a brain tumor, or am I going insane? And there followed a long period of medical tests and me trying to drive my wife off, because I thought I was going around the bend. And if I did not want her, ended up married to a man in a mental institution who she couldn't divorce because he was not mentally competent. And so we had an awful time. And I also, without understanding anything about this, had post-traumatic stress disorder. So this whole thing was just, the next couple of months were just god awful. Eventually, I read a book that my brother had sent me for Christmas called Science and the UFOs. And this book I would never have read it. When I saw it first, I thought, how stupid. My brother has a knack for sending people bizarre and uninteresting presents. He's noted for it. And this was a classic example of that. So
It's better than socks, though.
Because I did remember the memory seemed to be about that, something to do with this. I mean, I did remember being taken up in the air by flying up in the air like in an elevator, but with no elevator and stuff, and being in a little room with these strange beings and so forth. And what I didn't know was that there was a big UFO event taking place just across the Hudson River from us, called the Hudson Valley UFO sightings. And it was taking place. I just didn't know about it because it wasn't in the local papers or anything. And I read the book, and at the back of the book, it described an alien abduction. And I thought, my God, that sounds exactly like what happened to me. And I told a friend about it. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to tell Anne, because now I never wanted a divorce. I just was trying to get her to leave me because I thought I would be a burden in her life. And now that was the last thing I wanted. But if I told her this, I thought that she would change her mind and say, yes, let's get a divorce because you are crazy. And so I told him, Timothy Greenfield Saunders, and he said, well, just tell her. There's nothing else you can do. And so I did. I sat down with her and told her. And she looked at me and she said, oh, thank God. Now I don't have to get a divorce. And exactly the opposite of what I would have thought. And that from then on, Anne just took the thing over, and she was the one who decided we should write a book. She titled the book Communion and so forth. And Bud Hopkins, who was the man mentioned in the Science and the UFOs, we went to see him. He hooked me up with a psychiatrist of high repute, Dr. Donald Klein, the chief of the New York State Department of Psychiatry, who hypnotized me. And he was a specialist in forensic hypnosis and had, at that point in his career, told me that he had solved 72 cases with his forensic hypnosis. Between ourselves, Dr. Klein and I thought that we were looking at a crime. We were sort of laughing up our sleeves at Bud Hopkins and his belief in aliens. But then when he did hypnotize me, the whole thing came back very vividly, including something that had happened the previous October that I had completely forgotten. And where there were two friends, Annie Gottlieb and Jacques Sandalescu, at the cabin at the same time. And it turned out that they remembered the incident vividly, that it had happened. There's this huge light had come over the cabin and filled the whole place with light. I thought the house was on fire, and I leaped up to try to get everybody out. And then the light went away, and there was a big bang, and my son started crying downstairs, and I rushed downstairs to comfort him. And Annie was standing in the doorway of the guest bedroom beside our son's bedroom. And I said to her, it's all right. And then went in and comforted my son and went back to bed. Later, Annie said, when she was interviewed about this, that she had heard little feet scurrying across the floor of the bedroom upstairs above her, and thought it was our cats before I ran downstairs. But our cats weren't there. So it was them. They were in the house. And it turned out that this has been in my life a long time. And I just didn't remember it. It was even in my childhood, apparently, because during the second hypnosis session with Dr. Klein, I spontaneously regressed to my childhood, to the age of 11, without even knowing it. But he noticed my voice had changed timbre, and he was very professional. He had done this sort of thing many, many times. And he said, "How old are you?" And to my amazement, you're not gone when you're under hypnosis. At least I wasn't. I heard my little boy, Texas little boy voice chirp out, "I'm 12." And I thought, what am I saying? I'm not 12. Then he proceeds to uh, interrogate the 12-year-old Whitley about an experience that had happened all those years ago. And this all changed my life. I still don't know what they are. Communion, the book, ends with a group of questions about what they may be. I don't think anyone knows what they are, but they are certainly something, and they are something quite remarkable. They're still in my life to this day.
Do you still see them as like when you first saw them? Are they still the same, or as the how do they appear? Do they appear sort of like physically, or is it sort of a mental thing?
No, can be very physical.
Okay.
I don't own the cabin anymore, but the owner lets me take friends up there. And 4 weeks ago now, I had a group of friends. All of them have had close encounter experiences up there. And one of them was having a FaceTime call with her mother, who knows nothing about any of this, and had no idea where her daughter even was. And she was sitting in the bedroom that she was occupying at the cabin. And suddenly the mother says, "There's a giant cat standing behind you."
What?
Seeing the big eyes, of course. And so the young woman turns around, and of course, she sees nothing. And she says, "Well, I don't know what you saw." And they continue their conversation. And then she comes down and says to me and to the others that were there, "Listen, they're in the house. My mother just saw them, one of them standing behind me. And I was feeling a presence in the room, but I couldn't see them." And then later we went out walking in the forest that night, That's how I contacted the visitors in the first place. How I regained contact with them was walking in the woods late at night. And so we were out there walking in the woods, three of us, me, her, and another member of the group. And one of these people showed up and was very, very briefly moved past us in the woods beside the path we were on, just enough to be visible, and went racing up the hill. And this particular place has a certain geologic configuration that I'm not going to describe in detail, that they like, and they are in there. They're not going back and forth and flying saucers at all. They're in that geology, and they've been there for years. They've been there maybe longer than we even have been. So I don't know, but in any case, yes, I do encounter them fairly frequently.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's what I wanted to ask you, Whitley, is because because I've heard you taking people to the cabin quite often to have these experiences, and I was always wondering, well, what's with the cabin that you can have the experiences there, like better than other places?
I can explain that. I think. Excuse me. Pardon my allergies. The cabin is sited near a seam of iron. A big seam of iron under an old mountain range. It's really looks like more hills now, called the Shangam Mountains. And this is magnetized iron, most of it. So the area is unusual, and it has, at the far end of it, there's a road called Magnetic Mine Road. And in the evenings, balls of light come out of the ground down there. And people have gone down there to see that for years and years. And I think they're a natural thing. I don't think it's aliens coming out in little balls of light at all. And then the far end of it, in Woodstock, New York, there is a facility now run by a company called EG&G Rotron, a defense contractor, which houses sensitive documents in this iron, in mines drilled into this iron. And it's known as the Iron Mountain Facility. And documents from private industry like banks and so forth are stored in the same general area in another part of the facility that's run by a company called the Iron Mountain Company. And then south of that, somebody else is there. And that somebody else is who we see at the cabin, because the cabin is right near the part of it where they are apparently live. I guess although I cannot imagine what their lives must be like. Obviously, very different from ours.
Geez, that's interesting. Eh? It's funny. I was in India recently, and we went up this mountain, and it was called Magnetic Mountain, and you could park the car on a slope, like incline upwards, and then take your foot off the brake and accelerator and everything, and then the car would get pulled up the mountain very slowly.
This was in India?
Yeah, in India, just before past Kashmir, going up to Ladakh through the Himalaya mountains there. I didn't see any UFOs or anything, or balls of light. I mean, that would have really topped it off.
I absolutely love India. I was just there recently, last January, and going to Varanasi and Jaipur and places like that. What an extraordinary place it is.
Oh, well, was that just on holiday, or you doing a?
No, it was holiday.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then Whitley, with you meditate every day. I mean, you wake up even 3 a.m. to do meditation, and it's basically Vipassana, right? I mean, with your description of it, you do a sensing exercise. You call it the sensing exercise, but it's like you scanning your body. Is that right? Like from head to toe?
Yeah, I do an exercise called the sensing exercise that I learned in something called the Gurdjieff Foundation in the early 70s. It is a matter of taking control of your attention, which we normally is out in the world, like my attention is on you right now, and taking at least part of it and putting it on your body to expand it, and also to open your mind. And it turned out that this was important to these beings, to communication with them. And they taught me a slightly different method from the one they use in the Gurdjieff work. And I do it twice a day with a group of friends on Zoom, and twice a day by myself, or not really by myself, but sort of by myself. And the main one is at about between 3 and 4 in the morning. And I do it then because they would wake me, after my wife passed away, they would wake me up at that hour to do it every night. And by banging on my shoulder, blowing in my face, kissing me a couple of times, which was very strange, and things like that. Pinching my nipple, sending an electric jolt through one of my toes, all kinds of ways. And they woke me up like that from September of 2015 through last year. And now I have to wait, I wake myself up. And
so you don't get a nipple twister.
What?
They say you wake yourself up so you don't get the nipple twister.
No, I just do it. I wake up because I've done it so much. And or they will sometimes wake me up, and it has to be about an hour and a half before dawn. So it varies. You can't use an alarm clock. You have to just rely on yourself and your body.
That's interesting, Whitley, because in yogic practices, they say that you should do the best time for meditation is an hour and a half before sunrise.
That's right. That's Brahma Muhurta time.
Okay,
And
yeah.
that's
So,
that ancient, that they're very much part of that ancient knowledge and ancient being. And that's my books that I write. I've been writing since 2015, have all been based on the relationship that I have during that hour. We work on the books together, and I have this object in my ear, this implant that was put in May of 1989 that I didn't know how to use until after Annie passed away, and it suddenly became essential to me. And now it's my primary writing tool. I use it for all kinds of research. Um, it's far better than artificial intelligence, let me tell you.
it's like kind of like Neuralink, because you say it comes up like a little screen where you can actually read writing. Is that
Yes,
right?
in this eye, a little slit opens up, and it's not, you if like I look against a white wall in front of me, and it's not on now, but it would be if I was working. And normally I don't see what's in there. But what's
Wow.
happening is it's drawing things up from deep memory and bringing them up to the surface. And it is very mind expanding because we forget a lot of what we see and read over our lives. And this brings up what's useful to whatever I'm working on. And then at the Brahma Muhurta time, there's planning for the next day's work, usually.
Wow. And also, I remember you saying that when you first found out about that implant, you were so, it freaked you out so much, and you went to go get it operated. And then when they were trying to get it
Oh,
out,
yeah.
it kind of moved, like it moved to get away
I'll,
from the operation. And they got
right.
some of it out, didn't they?
I'll tell you what happened. In May of 1989, it was a May night. We were at the cabin. It was warm. The windows were open. It was about 11 o'clock at night. Anne was asleep and I was reading. And I heard the crunching of gravel in the driveway. And there was no car lights, meaning that the someone had driven in and with their lights off. I was, we had a big gate which was locked, which meant that they had somehow passed this gate through the gate. And I scared me, of course. I had under the bed a shotgun, in the drawer beside the bed, a pistol, and on the wall, some switches that I could turn on just by flipping them, and the whole area around the cabin would be flooded with light. And I turned to turn on the floodlights, and I heard as I woke, turned and came to full consciousness, I heard a voice in the backyard, a male voice, say very quietly, "Condition red." At that moment, I saw two people, a man and a woman, standing near the foot of the bed. So instead of trying to turn on the floodlights, I started to go for the shotgun. And the next thing I knew, I was lying on my right side facing Anne, who was still asleep. I could not open my eyes. I could not see. I could not move. And the woman was speaking very softly and gently to me. And the man was pressing my head, this side of my head, down into the pillow very hard in waves. And I couldn't do a thing about it. A moment later, they it stopped. There was a big flash of light, a lot of crashing in the woods. I jumped up, grabbed the pistol, and noted that the alarm system was still armed, so it had not been a breach. Running through the house looking for some kind of some other way of entry other than a breach in the alarm, in a window or something. It was all intact. So I ended up sitting on the bedside wondering what in the world had happened. Was this real, or was it some kind of dream, or what? And I spent a very uneasy night. the next morning when I went out to get the papers, which I did every morning because they didn't deliver them that far out, I'd have to go into town and buy them at a store. The garage door was wide open. I hadn't checked that. I hadn't thought to. And the alarm system was still on. So that's how they had gotten in. I called the alarm man and he came and said, there's a big magnetic field hanging there, and I don't know where it's coming from because it's not my system, my equipment. And he just changed out the switches and it worked again. So we were just at a loss. And I thought to myself, then the next day it began, my ear hurt. And I felt this, and I already knew about alien implants. I knew Roger Lear, who was a doctor here in the States who took them out of people. And I thought to myself, my goodness, I've got one of these implants. And so I told Anne the story, and she said, well, I said, I want to get it taken out. And she said, why do you want it taken out? I said, because they're tracking me now, and I don't want to be tracked. She said, Whitley, nobody cares whether or not you go down to get the paper or out to the groceries or what you might do. You don't do anything anyone would be interested in. If they're tracking you, that's going to last a week. They're going to get bored and go. We need to find out what it's really about. And we can't do that unless we leave it in. So I left it in. A few years later, we had lost the cabin. And, you write a book like Communion, you get beat up so much in the media, eventually people stop buying your books. And that happened. That's why I live in a little flat in California instead of in a nice big cabin in a house in New York that we used to have. I lost everything. So anyway, we've moved to Texas. We're living in a little condo that we had there. And I meet a doctor who, we're socially. And I said to him, I've got this little thing. Why don't you feel this in my ear? And Anne's obviously looking very annoyed. And he feels it. And he says, oh, yeah, that's a little cyst. Come to the office Saturday morning. I'll take it out. I'll pop it right out. And I think, I've got it. I'm going to get it out. And Anne says, all right, when we're together alone, you get one chance. And if it doesn't come out, you promise me you will never try again. She knew a lot of things. She was not what she seemed. There she is back there beside the communion lady. Anyway, so he goes in, and it's all on video, and he tries to makes an incision. There was never an incision there. When they put it in, the pressure pushed it through my skin, apparently. So anyway, he makes a little incision, and it's on the video, and you can see, they say it's a white disc. They can see it. And then suddenly it moves down into my earlobe. And he knew that I had written Communion. And he makes the connection at that point, obviously, that he's not taking out a cyst at all, that this is some kind of alien implant or something. And he says, well, I'm going to have to close this up. I'd have to take your whole ear off. And he puts this stitch in it and pulls out. 2 days later, it comes on its own up from my earlobe. My ear starts burning like crazy. And it comes back up to where it is now. Yes. And if it had been taken out, it would have ruined my life. Because after Annie passed away, she began to use it. And I'll tell you why I know that, I know it's her. Because it became so active, and it was obviously working with me on my books. At one point, I asked it, because it had become so active and it had never been like that before. Who are you? And the slit slows down, and going through it quite slowly so I can read it quite easily is the phrase, it's me, Anne. And oh, wow. I realized I'm still working with my wife on my book. She's still here. Wow. Now, some doctors on the inside, and I'm not going to go through the boring stuff about, I obviously can't tell you their names or anything about them, so don't even bother to ask. They wanted to get a CAT scan of it. And I think that whoever's on the other side of it was afraid that that would lead to me maybe agreeing to let them open it up and look at it or take it out or something. So the CAT scan is scheduled for a Thursday. The previous Tuesday, the Tuesday before, there is a certain signal, and I'm not going to go into anything about what it is or how it's used or anything about that level. In any case, I know this knock. It's a knock at the door, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I know to open the door when I hear that. And so I rush out and open the door, and there are two men there, one of whom I've seen in the same type of context before. The other one is, I always think there's always two of them. I think the second one is some kind of a guard, so that if I go berserk, the one that's doing the talking won't get hurt. So anyway, they don't trust me at all. So they're human. I mean, these are human. They look human. There's nothing, and like the implant was put in by human beings, there was no sign of any alien. There might have been something like that in the background, but I've never been sure. Anyway, he says that we would like to come in and explain to you how this implant works. And they do. They explain how it draws information up from my deep mind and brings it to the front, and how it works to create synchronicities where if I need some information, it's quite amazing. If I need information, I mean, really obscure information sometimes that can't be found, like on the internet, it comes synchronistically. And it works beautifully. It's quite remarkable. So they explain this, and they say that it was invented by a man that the fellow says is named Konstantin Raudive. And they leave. And of course, I immediately Google the name because it sounds vaguely familiar to me. It turns out that this is Konstantin Raudive was his name, and he was an expert in electronic voice communication between the living and the dead in his lifetime, and could actually achieve to the point where he could sometimes have dead people appear on TV screens, which is videotaped. I mean, he was really an expert.
Wow.
And so I think to myself, my goodness, this is not, no wonder it said it was me, Anne. This is a connection it's got not to do with aliens, between the living and the dead. And the dead are real. And, we live in a world where, there's no such thing. It's all done. You die and you're gone. And it's a crippled, blinded world. This is only part of life. The real life this is preparation for real life. And only when we leave this time stream do we begin to really live. And so the implant connects me to my wife, who is very actively engaged in all of this. We wrote our first book together after she died, was called Afterlife Revolution. And it gets into a lot of detail about how she created an avatar for herself and all kinds of things. She was not what she seemed. I met her in a sort of a matchmaking thing in 1969, but it was not what it seemed, obviously, and she was not what she seemed. She was a very sweet, extremely brilliant young woman, down on her luck and living rough almost, but just this extraordinary person, a very lovely woman, and the best mind I ever encountered. And I place a premium on intelligence. In my relationships, because I had realized in 1969 that if I was going to be happy, I needed to have a really smart wife, and preferably one smarter than me, and because I'm quite smart. But I would like a wife who was even smarter, because I thought she would be more comfortable that way. So in any case, I had plenty of trouble with girls who found me intimidating and overbearing and so forth. So I wanted someone who could hold their own. And Anne was really smart. We met anyway with this service that called Mindmates, which I found in a local newspaper, the Village Voice in New York. Filled out the forms and wrote all these essays. This was before computer dating. And I was matched up with 5 women, 4 of whom had the last names of fish. And I thought, how odd. Is it really only one woman here? And so I called one of the fish, and she was real. She was named Trout or something, Salmon. And we didn't really hit it off. So I thought, well, I'm going to try the one who's not named after a fish, Ann Maddox. And I went into the place where she was working as a receptionist. I didn't know she was working as a receptionist. She only said to go to the front desk and ask for her. She later told me that if she hadn't liked the look of me, she would have said that Anne wasn't there. In any case, I walked up to the front desk, and there was this wonderful woman, young woman with great big brown eyes looking up at me. And I thought, boy, I hope Ann Maddox is as pretty as this girl. And I said to her, I'm Whitley. I'm here to see Ann Maddox. And she looks up at me and she says, I'm Ann. And we were not apart again for more than 2 weeks for the next 45 years.
Wow.
Yeah, you were like,
She
yes.
She was something else. She decided that she would, I said I wanted to be a writer. She decided that's what he's going to be. And she went back to college to get a master's in English literature so she could edit my work.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And she did it, boy. She worked during the day, and in the evenings, I wrote 5 pages each evening, and she edited. And that went on for 7 years.
Oh,
she delayed having a baby because she knew that if she had a baby before I was an established writer, that I would stay in what I was doing then forever, the advertising business. The devotion was extraordinary. And she was why all of this happened. I don't think the visitors would have even bothered with me if I hadn't had Anne by my side.
Jeez. Well, they don't make relationships like that anymore, Whitney, that's for sure. And
that's on your behalf. Also... Don't speak about me. It's yours.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I've had really bad luck with my relationships. I like obviously I'm working on myself, Whitley. Hopefully I'll find someone like that. But Whitley, Anne, like whenever you talk about her and you write about her, I mean, the support that she gave you, I mean, especially through the whole abduction stuff and that, it always sounded like, to me, I was always thinking, geez, she must be influenced by them in some way, or either that, or she's just highly intuitive, because it always seemed like she was like an agent for them, because she was always, motivating you, pushing you with it. So do you think that this is the case, or do you think that she had some other kind of connection? And I mean, because she didn't seem like she had many weird experiences. Like you got weird experiences all the time.
She didn't have any weird experiences, and it annoyed her. I was the one who had all the experiences, and she said, I'm apparently I'm the coach. But Annie got brain cancer in 2013. And in January of 2015, she began insisting that I memorize a certain poem called Song of the Wandering Aengus by W.B. Yeats. And it has in it the lines. It starts out, I went out to the hazelwood because a fire was in my head and cut and picked a hazel wand and hooked a berry to a thread. When white moths were on the wing and the moth-like stars were flickering out, I dropped the berry in a stream, and caught a little silver trout. When I went to blow the when I went to put it on the floor and blow the fire aflame, something rustled on the floor and someone called me by my name. It had become a glimmering girl with apple blossom in her hair who called me by my name and faded through the brightening air. Now, the phrase, the white moths, was there. This is in January when I had no idea that she would die the next August. And she absolutely insisted that I memorize that poem. And what then happened was, after she passed away, I was at a conference. I started doing a lot of things because I wanted to get out of the house. I was so grief-stricken. It was unbelievable because she was an immense, towering presence in my life, a little woman barely 5 feet tall who was just an extraordinary human being. Let me put it that way. I wish the image of her was, yeah, let me move a little bit so when I talk, you can see her in the background.
Oh, there you go. Thanks.
She, in any case, at that point, see, what's happened now has happened sometimes. The implant, I've been using it the entire conversation. I use it during these interviews, and it turned off. And now I can't really remember what I was saying because it was inside. The implant expands my mind and becomes, it becomes much bigger mind. In any case, let me see if I can reconnect with it.
I hope that's not a bad sign. I'd be like,
No, it does this. It does this.
I can tell you where you ended off.
And when I moved and altered my concentration, it broke off. But it'll come back on and again in a minute.
Well, you were mentioning that the white moths.
Yeah.
There was a specific reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right. So I was at this conference in the Ozarks or somewhere, and the surveillance camera in my living room began sending texts. And I looked at the text, and this was saying that there was movement. And I thought, oh my God, someone's in the living room. So I looked at the image, and it was this white moth was flying back and forth in front of the camera. And that kept happening. And people would say that's not an ordinary moth because they don't fly like that back and forth in front of a camera in the broad daylight. And it was true. It would just stay right in the range of the camera, right in front of it. And when I would come home, there were never any moths around. And then I remembered Anne had loved one of my short stories. She's always said it was my best story. It's called The White Moths. And people had been calling me and saying that, in fact, the night Annie passed away, the first call came in at 9:30. She passed away at 7:15, and now it's working again. She passed away at 7:15, and at 9:30, a friend of hers called to ask how she was because people were concerned. They knew she was ill. And I thought, oh, the last person I want to talk to is one of Anne's friends right now. But she called and she was all excited. She said, Whitley, I just heard Anne's voice in my ear telling me to call you. And I had been sitting there thinking, Annie, if there's anything left of you, please let me know. And I told the lady, I said, well, Anne passed away earlier tonight. And she said, well, I heard her talking to me just a minute ago. And that happened again and again over the next couple of weeks in various ways with different people. And then I remembered we had made a pact years before when she was reading all the letters we got in from communion. There were thousands of them. They're all collected at a university here in the States now called Rice University in Texas, which is actually a very prestigious university despite its peculiar name. In any case, it's named after someone named Mr. Rice, apparently, who founded it. In any case, she these the letters, she came out of her office and she said, she was very much alive then, of course. She was reading the letters back in the 1980s, 90s. And she said, Whitley, this has something to do with what we call death. And we realized there was all connected. The dead and the visitors are all a connected thing. It's not aliens from another planet, it's something else, or that's part of it. In any case, we made a pact that the first of us who would pass would come, if possible, to friends and tell the friends to communicate with us, because neither of us would have believed it. If I'd heard her voice in my head, I would have thought it was my imagination. And we're both like that. We don't buy into that stuff very easily. And I thought, my God, she's doing it. And the relationship goes on. I think that when I do the 3 o'clock meditation and work on the book, I think it's Anne working with me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's actually inspired me, because I remember reading it. I can't remember which book it was. It was that one or the A New World. I can't remember. You were saying that, and then I was thinking, geez, I want to actually do that with my parents, but I've never packed up the courage, because I think if I start talking to them like that, they'll think I've lost my mind. But yeah, it has inspired me to do that with people I love. And then also we're back to the meditation thing, because I remember, I don't know which book it is as well, because I've heard so much like with all your interviews and books and that. I remember you saying that you asked the visitors, why me? And they said because they saw a glow.
Yes.
And I always thought, well, was that because you were doing the sensing exercise that you made you glowed, and that's where they found you? Like, what did you mean by that they saw a glow?
Well, when I first heard that back in the 80s, I thought they meant like the glow of cities and stuff. They saw a glow of from Earth, because I visualized them as being aliens. But then I realized later, I was at a conference, and a woman came up to me and said, Mr. Strieber, I just heard Anne's voice in my ear saying to tell Whitley I can see him when he's sitting in the chair. And that immediately I understood. That was when I do the sensing exercise. I sit in this chair on a little couch. And I thought, my God, that's the real meaning of we saw a glow. They saw me sitting out there in the woods. They can see you when your attention is on your body. When you take control of your attention, they can see that. And they would see, visualize it, they would see this little glow of this guy, because I've been doing this exercise every day for over 60 years. And they would see this at 11 o'clock at night. I would be doing it. And they got interested, because there was this guy out there, some dope, who was doing the sensing exercise, and they saw it and they came to investigate.
And is that what you think sparked off the whole those
Yeah,
weird
I think that's
experiences?
exactly what it was. I think they had known me as a child, and they reconnected with me is what happened. And they saw that this was going on and got interested in rebuilding the relationship, basically. And that's what has happened.
Because I meditate every day, twice a day, and I've got this colleague, which is actually quite a good friend of mine now, and she's a devout Christian. Like, she's very, very Christian. I mean, it's her what do you call it? Her passion for it is actually quite amazing.
Overly passionate.
but she, because so we would travel a lot, and then she would see me sitting there meditating, like in the evening or in the morning or whatever, like if we're in hotel rooms or like in the shared area or whatever. And she would tell me, she said, stop doing that because you don't know what you are calling. She said, you don't know what will come in and possess you. And she was very against me, me doing it. And I'm just thinking, oh, yeah, obviously just a religious, her dogma, whatever. But then when I heard you saying that's like stuff like that, I was like, well, maybe that does have maybe that's a thing. Also, the other thing is Elizabeth April. I don't know if you know Elizabeth April. She's quite a, I don't know, what do you call a UFO influencer. She's this very pretty girl on Instagram and that, and she's become very famous with her experiences. But it all started when she went to.
Hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So there's a lady named Elizabeth April. I don't know if you know her. She's quite she's come very famous from her experiences as well in the UFO field. And her experiences started when she went to a Vipassana course. There's those 10-day silent retreats where they just do Vipassana all day. I've gone to one here in South Africa, and she said, in like I don't know, on her fourth day or whatever, she just these white like the beans that you have on your book communion, but she said they were taller, not the short grays, but the white tall ones. They visited her, and that's when her contact experience happened, was from start doing this meditation thing. So that's when then I started thinking, okay, maybe that's my religious friend, maybe she's onto something. I don't know.
I'm a good man and a very devout man, and there's no reason for anything evil to be interested in me, so I never even think about it.
I'd like to ask a question. There's a lot of thought that the alien entity, or I actually don't even like that word alien because it's, anyway, these entities, these beings, follow family lines, almost like a bloodline.
Yes,
so
they do.
Yeah. So have your parents, do you recall anything from your parents' side? Did your mom or dad ever mention anything to that extent from on their behalf, on their side?
I think my dad was involved because I remember going to our country house in Texas with him to meet them. And but he never said anything about it. And he may not have been consciously aware of what was happening. And he died before this, he died in the 70s before I was aware of any of this. So I never asked him about it. However, my uncle, his brother, was involved in the Roswell incident. He was at Wright Field, which is now Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio, when the debris and the bodies were brought in from Roswell. And he was in the Air Materiel Command, which meant that he received that material and was aware of it and studied it. And so there was a significant family involvement that I didn't even know about until after I published Communion, and he told me of his experiences and introduced me to a friend of his, General Arthur Exon, who had done more extensive work in this than my uncle had. And so there was a definite family connection that I didn't know about. And with my father, it's possible, in fact, probable, because how else would I remember? Why would he take me out to the country house in the middle of the night, which he did a couple of times? And I remember meeting seeing these things come across the sky and land in the pasture behind the house. And I went out there, and I don't remember anything about what happened, but I did go out there, and he took me to the house. So if he didn't know, if his memory was wiped, that's one thing, but he was involved somehow, I'm pretty sure.
Your father was also in the military, wasn't he?
He was during World War II, yeah. And then after that, he was an attorney, and he worked apparently with the FBI in some way, but I don't know. He was very circumspect. If you asked him about his military service, he would say, well, I'll tell you what I did. I picked up cigarette butts at Fort Sam Houston here in San Antonio. Was all I did. he was not telling you anything about his military service, so no idea what he did.
No.
Oh,
So
yeah.
no, Whitley. So the reason why I asked the whole family thing is I don't really want to get personal on my side, but my mom, since the early 50s, she was experiencing abduction type things right through to even today while she's still alive. But not so much today. It was more prior. She used to tell me when I was in primary school. I used to come home. She used to tell me all what had happened the previous night, what's happened during the day. So I always, from a young age, I've always believed these type of things. But something that occurred to me, and I don't know if you've ever heard of this phenomenon. It's called the shadow people. It's
But I've never experienced it.
Yeah, I've seen. I used to when I was young. I used to see in my dreams every single time. I used to see the same man with a black hat, black raincoat. He was always, always, always in my dreams, and it was terrifying. It wasn't in the nice dreams. This guy used to appear all the time, and sometimes I actually knew when he was there. And my mom had said to me that she had seen the same man when she was young. She had seen him as well in a dream. So that's the reason why I asked if, with the family, the whole family thing, if it came down through the family, if they're interested in the family for some reason.
Yeah, I that is not a phenomenon I've known personally, but you're not the only person I've heard tell that they've seen that.
Mm.
Not
So,
that, there are lots of things that the brain does that are known to medical science, and that possibly is something like what's it called, the old hag, when a person has a
Yeah,
sleep
sit in your chest.
and they
yeah, that's like a sleep paralysis almost.
Mm.
Yeah,
and it disappears when they are able to move.
yeah. I've had like similar experiences with sleep paralysis, seeing like shadow things in the room. But Whitley, what do you think of CE5?
Of what?
CE5, this people are doing these meditations now to actually call UFOs. Stephen Greer made it quite famous, the CE5 protocol. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, it works apparently. I've never been interested in doing it. I don't want to necessarily need to call UFOs since they come anyway.
Yeah. No, the only reason why I asked you is because I've been doing it like nearly every night for the last I don't know, 2 weeks, and I've seen like a lot of the nights nothing happens, but then now and then there'll be like just a flash of something in the sky that's in the same place, and then about 2 nights ago, this really bright light was just in the sky, and then I was looking at it and I was like, wow, that star is really bright. And then as I looked at it, and I just thought that it just faded out into nothing, and it was gone. And I was like, wow, that's quite interesting. But then I remember on the one podcast, I don't know if it was on your book or whatever. Maybe it wasn't. I think maybe it was in their book them, where you said that the aliens they after our souls, and they want to take our souls. And then I started getting a bit worried about it. I thought, geez, maybe I should stop the C5 thing, because maybe what if I start getting abducted and then they take my soul?
You'd better look to your soul, because this is about the soul. It's about the soul. And if, one of the things that's happened to those of us in the Western world and in most of the world is that we have lost touch with our souls. We're soul blind. There's a lot of information about how to make sure you have a strong soul in every religion in the world, and you can take your choice as to how to do it. There's many paths that all lead to the same place. You want to die with a strong, pure soul that is light enough to ascend. And you see all around you in this world people who are not doing that, and who are living for bad reasons. And I've seen them, they just disappear immediately when they die. They fall right out of their bodies. And I have not had I've not had to know I've known a little bit of what happens. And all I can say is that you need to lead a pure, good life. The the ancient Egyptians knew this. They have they had something called the 42 Laws of Ma'at. And if you read those, a lot of them are couched in terminology that is no longer very relevant to us because they're thousands of years old. But basically, they are telling you how to accept the mistakes you have made and to do good in the world as best you can, so that in their world, in their understanding, your soul was measured against the weight of a feather. And if it was lighter than the feather, it would ascend. Otherwise, it would not. And if it stays here in this level for very long, you end up living another life in this level. And most of us are here because we've been doing that for a long time. And it's possible to get out of that. And, you know, Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within you. And that's where you have to go. You have to look for that. In the Temple of Delphi, there was the admonition, know thyself. Know thyself. Look carefully at yourself. And G.I. Gurdjieff said always that you have to have remorse of conscience, because every single one of us has done things that hurt others that we can't undo. And we have to accept that part of ourselves and know it and try in our lives to do better. The man I met in the night when I had the experience that led to the writing of the book, The Key, the master of the key, this extraordinary man I met in a hotel in Toronto in 1998 in the middle of the night, in itself an extraordinary story, said to me, I asked him, what is sin? Because that's such a strange word. And it's like words like compassion. You don't know really what they mean. We think we do, but if you think about it, you don't. And he said, sin is denial of the right to thrive. And if you look at your own life, you see when you have done that to yourself and others, and you live your life in such a way that you do the opposite. You encourage the thriving of a human being in their life, everyone around you. I asked Annie, who was obviously a master of some kind, although she would laugh at me if I ever said that to her. Probably is now, in fact. But in any case, I asked her about compassion because I always wondered what it is. You know, she used to, when we would go out, she would always, when a man was there begging, she would give him something without hesitation. And I said, Annie, what if he's just a drunk? She said, it's not my business. He's there asking. That's my business. My business is not to ask why. And I said, well, what do you regard compassion as? And she looked at me quite this sort of open-eyed look that she had. And she said simply, each of us is all we have. And that is one of the most powerful things that's ever been said to me in my life. Because if you look at any other person and you think that this person, you is all they have, you immediately feel their worth and their value and their importance to themselves is just like yours. It takes you out of your ego completely.
Yeah, awesome.
Oh, that's beautiful, Whitley. It really made me think a lot there, man, about my own life and the people around me. So thank you. It was wonderful.
And you live in a country full of very poor people. It'll change
Yeah.
the way you see it, the way you see your whole life. It did me.
Yeah, no, I mean, actually, I saw at a road at this traffic lights here. There's a lot of people begging, and that. I mean, it is. I think about it all the time, but I just think like, do how does this change? Like, how do we get out of this? And I mean, even the other day there
How
was
do
a
we
guy.
get out of it? I know it. It's the same. It's not as bad here, obviously, but I was just in India recently, and it's terrible there. And you think to yourself, the sea of people, all of them struggling, the poor everywhere in India. And I thought each of us, each of them is as much to himself or herself as I am to me. Each of them.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
you
Man. It's
find
just,
your humility. You have to. And you have to accept that it's not about me changing the world. It's about me accepting the world in a new way.
yeah,
Yeah. No, cool.
hard.
Whitley, thank you very much, man. Yeah, awesome.
All right, okay. Well, we leave it at that, Whitley.
Yeah,
Let's
thank
see,
you very
thank you.
much.
Well, I'm so glad that you asked me, and I'm glad to be a presence in South Africa. I've never been interviewed by anyone from there before, so thank you.
Oh,
Well,
pleasure.
it was absolutely a pleasure to have you on here and an honor, actually. So thank you for making the time. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Whitley. Have a good
Thanks,
evening.
Whitley. Okay.
Cool, man. That
There's
was
so much
actually
more I want.
fantastic. Yeah, I know, but
I know there's so much more I wanted to ask him. Jeez, like it, man.
it's cool. Maybe one
Um,
day we'll bring him back on again if he wants to come back on.
yeah,
Yeah, it's awesome.
yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, guys. Anyway, that's it for us for tonight. Hope you enjoyed the session again. Like and subscribe. Well, your new saying for us. Like and subscribe. Follow us on YouTube, please, guys, if you can. It'll be fantastic. Our YouTube site is growing quite nicely, so thank you for those that are subscribing there. And yeah, man, hope to see you guys and chat to you guys next week. So we'll have a good evening, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, you too. Thanks,
Thanks,
Lee.
buddy.
Cheers,
Lekker,
mate.
bye.